So I think the people who are listening want to know why I asked you to come on my show and talk to me today. So
Okay.
why don't you tell me a little bit about like who you are and what you've been living with and what you survived recently.
Okay, so first and foremost, the name is Michael Wojciechowski, 31 years old, born with a rare genetic disorder called Osteogenesis Imperfecta. I have type 3. I know it's been segmented down to, now there's like 8 or 9 separate categories. They keep finding new ones as time is going on.
Meaning like new types?
Like different types of OI, the severities of them, and what causes, why some are divided into one group, another is divided into another one.
So because I remember when you and I first started hanging out.
There was like only 4.
Yeah, but right. There was only 4. That was what I was just going to mention. So now you're saying they've actually done more research and they've found like 8 or 9 different types?
Yeah, because they keep, it's, in my personal opinion, I think it's very stupid because they keep reducing the actual symptoms, but they keep creating types. But these types are very familiar to already established types, but they're just expanding it because there's some tweakage here and there. So it's sort of like albino, right?
Right.
And then you have a different sort of skin disease, and then that mimics maybe albinism, or you have like vitiligo, right? What Michael Jackson supposedly had.
Yeah, like where your skin turns like
Right.
a whitish pigment,
Right?
And it's like patches your skin.
Patches.
Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
I mean, someone's gonna be definitely offended that I sort of maybe said.
But it's a real opinion. No. It's not an opinion. You're talking about this is science.
For me, I just think that there has always been 3-4 types, and I think everything else is just a subcategory, and I just think it doesn't really serve that big of a purpose overall.
Yeah, right. Well,
But
just for people who are not really familiar with what osteogenesis imperfecta is.
Well, okay.
This is
It's a disease that affects the collagen.
Okay.
The creation of collagen or the type of collagen. Collagen is the building blocks of our bones. It's what basically tells our body this is what the overall skeleton is going to look like. And we're going to build based off of the parameters encoded in the collagen. That's why you have, that's why the different types of OI, you can be regular looking. You'll have very good bone mass, bone density.
It was kind of like Samuel L. Jackson's character in Unbreakable.
Exactly.
And it was the same, that, osteogenesis, that's what you told me. When I first said, what's osteogenesis imperfecta? You're like, you remember the movie Unbreakable? Samuel L. Jackson, he had that condition.
Absolutely. That's why he could walk at times. And why he needed a wheelchair at others.
Yeah.
Because he would break a bone, and it would be a more severe break than if you did.
Yeah, right. But let's rewind. Let's go back to what it was like for you in your early years based on what you remember. Like, tell us a little bit about, like, when you were born, like, where you spent the first few years of your life, things like that.
Well, all right, the beginning was rough because no one knew what I had.
Yeah, it's not something you could just easily diagnose.
At that time, there was no test for it.
Yeah, this is the 80s. This is when people were...
The bad old days.
Yeah,
the Wild
this is
West.
when everybody was listening to Wang Chung.
Yeah! Good God. All right. But yeah.
And you too, they were coming around too.
Oh, boy. You too.
Sunday, Bloody Sunday, dude.
Shut the fuck up. But anyways, yeah, there was no test.
Yeah.
So by all outside appearances, on ultrasounds and everything, I was a healthy kid. There was no indicator that something was wrong. And then comes the day, and
the day you were born.
The day I was born, and my mom had a C-section, and they pulled me out, and and they're wondering, why am I crying so much? What's going on?
Wait, dude, let me guess. You had a broken bone?
Bravo. Two, as a matter of fact.
Two? No shit.
Yeah.
Alright, so where?
A broken arm, and they had found that I had a broken rib inside my
Holy
mom.
shit. That fucking
So, they were wondering, why was this? And they discovered that when I was being pulled out, the doctor actually broke my arm.
That doctor's a dick, dude. You should go back and sue his ass.
Well, I mean,
Get your fucking money back.
Limitations, I'm sure I've already expired. So they did an X-ray on me. They saw I had a freshly broken bone, and they also noticed that I had several other healed bones.
Holy shit.
And
so you couldn't even go home at first. Like you couldn't you could and
they gave me just hours to live. Because this was uncommon. This was super uncommon. The only way they found out about OI was someone ran to the back and looked into the medical literature of things that matched up with what I had.
And they said that you only had a few hours to live.
They said I had a...
But here you are, 30, how old are you?
31.
31 years later.
31 years later. And I had a quick baptism. My baptismal... the names are disappearing from me right now. But the people who are supposed to stand in for baptism... godfather and godmother. They're a nurse and a nun, or a nurse and some doctor, or somebody from the hospital. So these aren't even official people in my life. They were just there
to have it go
to
through.
stand in, because I was given everything, and then because I wasn't expected to live beyond. Just a couple hours,
days, days max. So then, after a couple days, you obviously pulled through.
I pulled through.
And then they decided to have you move into Misericordia.
Well,
which Misericordia is.
We'll get there.
We'll get there in a minute. Yeah.
After I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, then a month, they were like, "All right. He's fine."
They're preparing that he's going to get heart attack.
Oh, really? When he was
His heart was beating so fast.
Wait, we're talking about something completely else. Are you talking about the hospital?
Yeah.
About when I was a little baby?
Oh, no.
No. Yeah, exactly.
All right, just keep on. We'll edit it.
Yeah. So yeah. After a time, a hospital can't keep you forever. They just can't. If you're not dying, and if you're not, in terrible condition that you need to be on life support or anything like that, you gotta find a way. You gotta find a home.
Yeah, right.
They can't legally allow you to go home because you're not well.
Right. And your house was certainly not equipped to
At that time,
handle
I was
you
not
because
in a house. It was an apartment.
Well, it was an apartment, but there were you had
my parents
more
weren't ready for it.
Right.
Like, this was utterly unexpected.
Right.
So I have to go somewhere. So my parents were told to go here, go see this nursing home, go see this nursing home. Every single one, my mom told me she didn't feel good to put me into it. She was not impressed. And then when they found Misericordia home, when she has told me this time and time again, when she walked through the doors, she felt like an immediate weight was lifted off her shoulder.
Yeah, this just
She felt home.
She felt like this place.
This was right.
This is a place that would take care of you.
And again, this was on the south side, so this wasn't necessarily the easiest
neighborhood.
choice for
Yeah,
them.
this wasn't it was distance.
It was half hour drive for them to, if they, to come and visit and all that sort of stuff. So the fact that my parents, my mom specifically, felt good enough to put me there. So that's what ended up happening. I ended up being in Misericordia home for the first 5-6 years of my life.
How do you think that affected your childhood? I mean, like, because if you look at, like, the standard, or not the standard, but, the typical family setup,
Mm-hmm.
I think those first 5 years, I mean, I have a 5-year-old at home. I think those first 5 years are so instrumental to developing them into, like, the people that they're going to be for the rest of their lives. This is where they
Absolutely.
learn compassion.
Everything.
And they understand, like, what's right and what's wrong. They understand who mommy is, who daddy is, that there's a routine that needs to take place every day. So obviously you developed a very different sense of what life should be in this place, because this place had to be kind of like what gave you the tools you needed to continue living and get to the point where you're at right now,
I think it was the best decision that my parents could have made. I'm not kidding.
Oh, sure. I don't know. I don't see why you would be.
I'm saying this for the audience.
Yeah.
Some would be horrified that, oh, you got left. You got stuck in this place.
Yeah, right.
But I've often thought about this. And I have to say, I thank my parents for making that decision.
Well,
Because it puts, for me at least, it put my own disease into serious perspective.
that's what I was going to get to.
In comparison with the kids that I saw there.
Right, because, tell us a little bit about that.
The kids there, a lot of them suffered severe brain damage. A lot of it actually ended up being the direct result of terrible handling on doctors' part during delivery.
No shit. So these are just perfectly...
They took too long in the birth canal.
Oh my God.
And all you need is just a couple minutes.
Holy shit,
to not have
to have
proper air.
Going to your brain.
And
That's it.
And you're done. You're a vegetable. From then on out. A lot of them have multiple sclerosis.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have a lot of them had autism.
Mm-hmm.
Like severe autism.
Yeah. Not like,
Like...
Not like way beyond the spectrum.
My dad often reminds me of this kid. I won't say his name. But he had such severe developmental disorder that you couldn't keep him in a regular crib. It had to be a crib that was basically contained. It looked like a cage. Because he would be hanging from the top of the cage. Like a monkey. When the nurses would try to grab him, he would lash out.
Yeah.
It took 2 fully grown female nurses, sometimes 3.
Yeah, to subdue him. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I was having a conversation with someone the other day. Like our bodies are the most deceptive things about us. Like there's some people who look skinny and look like you could beat the shit out of them, but like little do you know that for some reason their bodies they have like that right muscle working better than say you do, and they could just totally like annihilate you. You know what I mean?
100%.
And especially like when it comes to just strength, or just your grip. I mean, that's just something that you can't measure just by looking at someone.
You should have heard this kid.
Oh, I'm sure it was very, very vocal, huh?
It sounded, for lack of a better word, like a banshee, like a monkey.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. It must have been. But that's what I find so interesting and inspiring about you. We've been friends now for a very long time, and it's like I feel like out of everybody I've ever met in my entire life, you're the only person who could find yourself in a position like this, living with this, very difficult, condition,
Sure.
and seeing the light side of it and being like, you know what, at least my brain is working, and
100%.
and that's kind of like what got you out of there essentially, and allowed you to go on about
sane.
yeah, and I'm sure. So what was it like? Do you remember re-entering the household, your home, and like coming home and?
Absolutely.
What was that? What did that feel like?
It just was normal. It was one phase ended, a new chapter began. Literally, it was flipping a page.
Did you feel like you were close with your parents in the time that you were at Misericordia?
That's why I am so certain of innate senses within human beings. That's why I think that there is such a thing as nature and nurture. I think that's why, because I knew what home is. Because you have to understand, let's make it clear for your audiences. When I was at Ms., I would come home on the weekends.
Oh, okay. They allowed you to come home, so it wasn't like you were.
My parents had that stipulation in the agreement with them.
Right.
That if I was going to be a patient, if I was going to be a resident, it wasn't going to be like the ones that they had.
Yeah,
normally.
you had a special. You had you had special privileges.
Right, and one of those privileges was every weekend, Friday night to Sunday evening, I would be at home.
And you developed really personal relationships with the nurses at Misericordia because you were one of the only patients there that was,
I
sane,
could communicate.
and you could communicate with them. You probably learned. They probably taught you how to speak and how to
Absolutely.
read in the beginning, right?
I mean, I have this wonderful Irish nun who I still talk with to this day. And if she ever hears this, she'll know what Macas is. Because she had that thick Irish accent. So instead of saying markers, she would say Macas. Where are the Macas at? And I would always tease her. And when she would always tease me that I couldn't say shoulder, I would say soldier. So I was one of the kids everyone loved because I could communicate.
Right. You didn't. For them, it was a pleasure working with you because they knew how to help you. Mm-hmm. If there was something wrong, you could tell them. With some of these other kids, like this one kid you were telling me about, they don't know how to help them. I mean, they have to find a way to get. They have to speak his language, and
their language.
And all they have is the skills that they have.
Guess.
Yeah, you have to guess. And I mean, it's scary just to think about what it's like as a parent to have to deal with that, to know that you have a child that has this kind of condition.
I won't say his last name, but I'll say his first name. There's a kid who I absolutely loved. His name was Ross. And he had, I believe it was, it might have been MS, or it might have, no, it was cerebral palsy. He had cerebral palsy. And I loved this kid. And I would talk to him because as a youngster, I wanted him to be able to talk with me. So I would talk with him. And growing up, I felt it important. I felt it was my mission. And I always felt good when he learned a new word. I always felt like I was doing that. But I also know that the nurses, the speech pathologists who were there, they were also doing their work. But it was important for me to think that I was adding.
Well, of course, it gives you a sense of purpose.
Yeah, because
so you were already kind of like you grew up. You were forced to kind of like mature pretty quickly in a place
very
like
fast.
This.
Very fast.
Yeah. So, all right, you come home and then you're homeschooled, of course, right?
For the first 3 years, I was still going to school.
Okay, so you were going. But were you in were you in normal classes or did they have? Okay,
yes.
So you were in normal classes with everybody else,
right,
doing everything, and then after that you started getting sick, or?
When I was 8 or 9 years old, I had my first bad case of pneumonia. It was the first really noticeable case where I didn't even know I had it.
And pneumonia, it's not like even
It's insidious.
It's insidious, but it's bad for a healthy person to get it. But someone with your condition,
Absolutely.
that's like a fucking death warrant right there. I mean,
It's very serious
oh, of course,
because you're immobile, and our physiognomy, the way our bodies are built, bodies are built, our chests are not expanded the way your guys' chests are. It's much more caved in and smaller.
so one bad cough could break your ribs
Not only that, but what pneumonia does is it fills your lungs
with fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you already have tight spaces, and that becomes even tighter
Yeah.
because of mucus and just liquid, well then, you're just asking for trouble.
Okay, so you've had some pretty close run-ins with like kicking the can. Not
Sure.
once, but multiple times. I mean,
Absolutely.
even throughout the 12 years that we've been friends, like, you've been in and out of the hospital. And I think it's, based on what you're telling me and based on what I've gathered from everything, and based on how I know you, it always seems like the one thing that's always been a driving motivation for you is that purpose you feel you have on this earth, which is to help the people around you. You know,
100%.
to the best of your ability, and you're a smart guy. You know, you've advised me tremendously over the years, and and everything
I'm
I've
happy
been
to
doing.
be put in that position.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I consider you one of the first people I come to for pretty much anything. You know just as much about my business as anybody else.
Sure.
That is in my closest circle. And just from like looking at it from outside, it's like you've always obviously you've been at home a lot. You didn't get to go outside much as a kid, and even now as an adult. So what do? You read, and
A lot.
you read a lot of books. How many books do you read a month?
Well, I'm not going to say a lot. I'll say one. I'll say one or two.
Okay,
Um,
it's still better than most.
because I want to suck it in. I don't want to read something
Yeah, you're not just trying to like absorb it off the page.
to simply say, I read a lot.
Yeah.
There's nothing in that for me.
Yeah, and that's I think
What do I
something.
have to
I think that's
brag
something.
about?
Yeah, right. That's something we also share in common. Like reading when you're reading stuff, like you want to be able to. When you're doing anything, when you're watching a movie, I mean, you want to be there in the moment and absorb whatever it is that you're, exposing yourself to.
100%.
And especially like, and you've read some pretty thick books. I mean, you've read Dante's Inferno. You've read.
Thus spoke Zarathustra.
Did you read the Odyssey?
I read the Odyssey. I read the Iliad.
Yeah.
I read most Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I love the if there's everyone has an author that inspired them to read. Because let me just tell everyone, I hated reading as an adult. As I hated reading, period. I've told you this in private.
No, yeah, of course, yeah.
As a kid, I cried when I had to read. My parents
So,
would say...
I mean, well, that's because we grew up in that Nintendo generation.
No. Yes. But my parents, like your parents, immigrants, reading
Yeah, that
is
was like
super important.
Yeah, that was super important.
Fuck you if you didn't read.
Well, I was reading. I was just reading a lot of comics. I didn't really
Right,
read a lot of
but
books.
that was like...
I mean, my interest in like reading books really kind of came into when I was in college too, just like it did for you. And I mean, I read as much as I can.
For me, it was middle high school. That's when the light turned on.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, one of the biggest problems I had, especially in like college, is like you had to absorb these huge ass novels like War and Peace and like all these like this dense reading material.
Yeah, I know.
And like I was taking like I remember my senior year of college.
And what was the purpose behind them? That's also...
Well, I just at some point I mean, I read like the first. I had to read one semester. I just like loaded up on classes, and I had to read War and Peace, a Nabokov book, and just something else that is so dense I can't even remember what the hell it is. All at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I just can't. Like, and unfortunately I chose Nabokov's book because it was the shortest, but I really hate him as a writer. Just my own personal opinion.
Vladimir Nabokov?
Yeah, I just, I liked hearing him read his own work, but I'm just not a fan of, like, I don't see why he's celebrated so much. There's, like...
It's sort of like my opinion of Ayn Rand. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even dared venture down that route.
I mean, I didn't read Atlas Shrugged, but I read... What was that?
The Fountainhead?
The Fountainhead.
Uh-huh.
I don't get it.
You know why, Michael? Because you're not rich. If you were a rich white person...
You're off, probably. Probably. So if there's any rich benefactors who want to give me some money so that I can understand...
Make sure you give it to me first and then give it to Michael.
But yeah. But, I never understood the love affair with Ayn Rand. I kind of get it because it sort of takes off the stricture.
Well, I think it's one of those things.
Social responsibility.
Yeah, it's the social I mean, I kind of get the idea of it because I was, I worked in finance for a long time, and Ayn Rand's books were kind of like required reading for the company, but I wasn't invested enough to actually like read it. But I mean, some of the ideas I understand based on the philosophy that was going on in the environment I was in. And, I mean, I wasn't against it. I mean, I do think that we do need to help those around us. Mm-hmm. And we shouldn't just be thinking of ourselves in the sense that everybody thinks. I mean, as you're helping people, you're helping yourself. It's like you're becoming more experienced. You're becoming...
But Ayn Rand talked about completely separating yourself.
Yeah, completely separating yourself, being distant from even your own family. Yeah. And, that to me I think is a little extreme, which is why I never really like dove into it. Mm-hmm. I can understand why doing so is a way that, it's like eliminating problems. Mechanism. Well, it's like here, you go shopping, right? And you have all these groceries on your list, and you're going to be in the grocery store for a long time. Well, imagine this. Let's say your objective in life was to go and get out of the grocery store as quickly as possible. Well, the one way to do that would be to remove all the other groceries from the list, and you walk out of there with the one most important thing. The one most important thing. Like, let's say it's just milk, but you can't live off of milk. So even though you are, and going back now, even though you are only focused on yourself, this philosophy of it, me, you're not paying attention to like the bigger picture, which is, and you and I have plenty of conversations about politics. We're both very private about our political, well, I would say I'm private, you're not. But
I'm not. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Because I'm a person who believes in, let's just be honest. Let's be truthful to ourselves.
And you know what? I agree with that idea. But the thing is being in the position that I'm in, well, it's not that I can't. I choose not to. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. I choose not to because, for me, when I go
it's too risky.
Well, it's not even that it's risky. It's just it's not risky. I mean, okay, here's how it's risky, and I see where you're getting at. It's risky because people won't want to buy my book if I offend them in some way politically.
Not only that, but if you offend someone in your position, they're going to take it personally, and they're going to hit you personally.
Absolutely.
At whether it's online or, God forbid, they approach you at a convention and say, you're a fucking awful person.
Oh, yeah. Well,
fuck you.
I mean, I've had that happen to me anyway.
Yeah, but at least that's for your product and their opinion of it. But if they attack you on a personal level, well, that's an open ball game.
Well,
because where do you stick the dagger? You can put it anywhere.
That's like the one thing that this is like the one thing I actually come to you about the most is that sense of knowing what my limitations are in terms of what I can express, because sometimes you could say, The thing is like, we live in this culture now where everybody's on Facebook and social media.
Yes.
And everybody goes on there and they're basically saying all these things or whatever, but none of it has any context behind it because, you're just reading words. So if I start swearing...
Snippets.
Yeah, if I start swearing or going off on somebody, it sounds different than if I say it in person with an exaggerated tone and laugh afterwards or whatever the case is. People
Nothing will ever replace human speech.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of where we're headed next. I think that's what the whole idea of like this whole Facebook Live thing is about, is just getting on there and letting people actually talk within context. But
I think text is going to be done with in the next 10 years.
Really? You think so?
Yes.
I felt like that about handwriting. But it's kind of funny because like handwriting
Isn't it kind of making a comeback?
Actually, I think it is because it helps. It's brain development for kids, and and we don't think about these things as we're adults. Like now we sign everything electronically, and we do everything electronically. Like we don't think about it. But I mean, I write with my hand more than I thought I would. Not just from signing comics, but from like signing checks, from jotting down notes. I mean, when you're a writer, you gotta write. You gotta put shit down. But yeah, I mean, I think that's you probably have a point of, us eliminating text entirely. But here's the biggest problem is that, then you're depending on audio recognition, and the technology is getting better, of course, but it still fucking sucks. I mean, sometimes when I like send someone a message, like, by hitting that record button, it'd just be so much easier if I could just send them a recording rather than,
But I honestly think that's where we're headed, and why the interest is on creating bigger screens and better cameras is because we're going to enter a space where it's going to be our faces, our voices, our movements that the cameras are going to be catching, that is going to be so vastly important for the way we purchase things, for the way we log on to things. Because, for instance, I will never, ever deceive anyone by saying that I'm some wild text expert. There are far more people with expertise.
But here's the thing. See, as a businessman and as someone who is conscious of what I say before I say it, and that's a very powerful thing, I find text to be really great because before saying something, I can look at what I write, I can edit it, and sometimes stuff goes out and I miss something, which is unfortunate. It just digs at me every single time when I spell a word wrong or whatever.
Sure.
But the thing that I feel that the advantage it gives me as a business owner is that I can actually think...
Afterthought.
Yeah, I can say what I need to say when I need to say it.
Well, it's how I feel
when you're talking in public, a word can slip. And you may not intend to offend somebody, but suddenly because you said that word, suddenly it triggers something. And I mean, we live in a very sensitive society, and that's not something I'm mad about or that I hate people for being too sensitive. It's just something you accept. I mean, people throughout human history. I mean, we talk about nature versus nurture. People dating back to the beginning of history. We've always been sensitive. This is what has allowed us to kind of like get to where we are now because we always want better for the next generation. We always want easier.
There's always been goals.
There's always been goals. I mean, that's what drives human beings.
We talk about one thing very often, and it's how we seem to have entered a purposeless point right now. People don't have to struggle much.
I disagree with that. I mean, I think the struggle is very different. I mean, look at the dynamic and how things have changed now, particularly like in America, right? Because over the last 20 to 30 years, you started to see people of different races, women, and now you have, transgenders and all those minority groups,
subsectors.
they're now starting to get recognized for their skills and are getting into higher positions of power within companies, which leaves less jobs for other people, because now, you know, the workforce is much more competitive.
It's a real rat race now.
Yeah, it's a real rat race now. And, you know, it can be argued that it's all about who you know as opposed to what you know. And, I mean, you can argue it any way you want. And then you can hear stories about, like, that dude from In Pursuit of Happiness. What was that guy's name?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, Will Smith's character.
Yeah. Will Smith worked really hard for those millions of dollars. You know what I'm saying?
He absolutely did.
Both in that movie and in real life. But
absolutely.
Yeah, that dude's a workhorse, you know?
Yeah. And you can't take anything away from that.
No, you may not like him.
But I would argue, personally, that people are more dealing with the illusion of self-struggle than actual struggle.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's the human condition. You know, like, think about it. You know, we were just having a conversation about this, about being idle, being at home and having nothing to do. Every morning you wake up, you must have a sense of purpose. I think it's embedded in our DNA to have a sense of purpose. I think that's the reason why you're in this room right now, talking
100%.
talking to me and talking to our
because
audience.
I don't want to die. Period.
Right. You know, you have a desire to live.
Whatever that existence looks like, I still want to live. And see, let me get on to a personal subject that really touches close to home, which is death. Death by euthanasia, specifically. I find it very troubling that we're entering a point where you have advocacy groups for euthanasia, for people who want to die. Because if they're dealing with terminal illness, etc., etc. I understand their argument. They want to be in control. They want to have a say in whether they stay or go. That's why they argue for having access to the medicines to be able to...
Right. Yeah, to make it painless and to just
make it painless.
Yeah.
But I will argue, and again, this is wholly personal, this is subjective as fuck.
And for everyone who's listening right now, you can't see Michael, but he is making his Braveheart face right now. He's getting all Mel Gibson on my ass. Keep going. Let's go.
Yeah.
Finish that thought.
Thanks for that. Wow. Mel Gibson, huh?
Well, just finish your fucking thought.
But the point is that the road is always hard. No one ever said this life was going to be easy.
Sure.
You didn't have a say in your birth.
Right.
Why should you have a say in your death?
See? That's why I called you Braveheart, because, you know, remember at the end of the movie...
Absolutely.
He got, like, to drink that bullshit, and he, spit it out, and was like, I'm going to take my beheading and my...
100%.
You know...
Take your licks.
Yeah. He just... What is it they do when they cut you open and they take out your gut?
Disembowelment.
Disembowelment, that's right.
Yeah.
And they just... No, but when they
and
burn
quartering.
it... Yeah. Drawn and quartering.
Drawn and quartered.
Yeah. That fucking sucks. Just like watching your fucking guts be torn out of you.
I mean, but there's worse, where you'll be pulled by both ends.
But tell me, you wouldn't be like... You wouldn't think it would be cool to, like, die by, like, being pushed out of an airplane. And, like, getting to, like, experience that, you know, that...
Honestly and personally, no.
Because you know you'd die. You die from fear, because that's what happens when you're falling...
Right.
Yeah, into your death. You die before you even hit the ground. Your body just shuts off.
Absolutely.
Because it knows it's like... You scare yourself to death.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked up.
Right.
You don't even... And can you imagine if... You know, I've seen these videos where, like, people are walking, like... I don't know if it's, like, the Great Wall of China, but, like, some area...
Okay.
Where it has, like, glass grounds, and you see the glass, like, starting to crack.
that was a
And like, you see, like, that hoax is not funny, in my opinion, because what if someone really did get scared to death just from that?
Well,
you know
that's why it's happening in China.
Well, yeah, you could get away with that shit.
Yeah. The Chinese don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck you. All right.
We need to cut down our workforce.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And then do you see in those videos? There's like some like girl like hiding in the corner, and she's just like laughing.
Yes, 100%. I saw
dude,
that video.
if that ever happened to me, I'd fucking uppercut her ass. You know, like I don't go for those kind of jokes.
I first freak out, run to like a safer zone, and the first person, even if it was a little child, I just punch out of pure adrenaline rage that I was tricked that severely. Fuck that.
I totally agree, dude. Fuck that shit. But you know, that's the thing. When you have a desire to live and you have a desire to keep getting out of bed in the morning, then, you know, life has purpose. And I think that's something that's embedded in us. Like, if you look at bees and their behavior, you know, they're so...
workhorses.
They're workhorses.
They don't stop.
Yeah, they live to work.
They live for the queen.
Yeah, they live for the queen. And the queen lives to create more of them.
The queen doesn't do shit.
Well,
she just sits around and gives birth.
Well, dude, that's a lot of goddamn work. You know, you
I guess.
It's like taking a really big shit every day.
Oh, fuck that bitch.
I bet you a lot of worker bees do want to fuck that bitch.
I'm sure that the hierarchy, I'm sure that's a privileged space. I kind of envision it the same way as like being in the harem, right? During the Ottoman Empire. It was considered an amazing thing for a woman to be part of the Sultan's harem. I made it. Fuck yes.
My milkshake brought all the boys to the yard. You know, it's
damn right, it's better than yours. I can teach you, but I gotta try.
And now she's making money.
Yeah.
And now she's rich.
Hell
she's got all that fucking money.
Well, she has access to advisors,
cars, fucking, you know, lasers, and like other types of technology, like fucking airplanes and shit.
The Ottoman Empire doesn't exist, so what are we talking about?
Just saying, you know, kind of got, you know.
Yeah.
Just using my imagination, Michael. You're like fucking Disney, just like acquiring all these different properties and then sucking all the creativity out of everything.
You just ruined yourself for Disney for the rest of
I did, dude. Fuck that shit.
As a professional working in the entertainment industry, don't diss Disney.
Well, here's the thing I'll say, as you know, someone who works in entertainment. Mm-hmm. If I ever had the opportunity to work for Disney or any company in any capacity, I've told you this, I would go for the opportunity because of the pay.
You'd be stupid not to.
Right. It's for the payday, and it's for the opportunity to work on characters that I've grown up knowing and the experience of that and all this stuff.
I mean, the name itself, Disney.
But once you take that job, you know, you're working within those parameters. You don't get to come in there and say, all right, let's say I get to write, you know, some character at Marvel, and the way the hierarchy works
I want to have Mickey become like a badass all of a sudden.
Well,
like
I mean,
a Braveheart character, chopping off heads and.
Well, you know, I mean,
they'd never allow it.
It's kind of essentially. I mean, that's like the simple way of putting it. But if they tell you that, you know, like let's say you get a job, or let's say I get a job at Marvel and I'm writing some third tier character, and that third tier character is supposed to, you know, have sex with She-Hulk, then that's what's happening in my script because that's what the powers that be want.
Even though that wasn't initially what you thought.
Well, you make it work. You make it work to that. You know, you're playing in their sandbox. You got to accept their rules. I mean, but I think that as these companies get bigger, the biggest fear that a lot of the creators have is their grasp to control these characters and actually do cutting edge stuff with it. Yeah, I mean, you really can't do that anymore, even with the small characters, because now they're adapting them into TV and film and
mainstream.
For mainstream, I mean, a lot of look, Iron Fist, who was like a, you know, third tier character, got his own fucking show, and it fucking sucked. And I don't care who knows it because that show sucked.
I mean,
that was the worst goddamn show ever.
This is an interesting segue because you're a comic book guy.
I consider myself working in the medium of comics, but I've also done work outside of that. I'm an entertainer. That's my job.
No, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But where I was going to go with this is, I introduced myself to the world of comics because of, as a consumer, because of the Incredible Hulk. Because there was something that spoke to me about the Incredible Hulk. And this is going to sound obvious to your readers. This is going to sound cliche. But this is the truth. You want to see someone who isn't like you. So because I'm weak physically, seeing a character like the Hulk was really kind of empowering, especially growing up as a youngster, when you don't have a good sense of yourself. Not even because I didn't have a good sense of myself, but because you want to see a better version of whether you want to call it humanity, whether you want to call it an inner self. You want to see something different than what your reality is. So I liked the Incredible Hulk because he was big, powerful. He could crush helicopters like they were putty in his hand. That's powerful when you can't even lift up 2 pounds.
That's something that you saw a lot of yourself in the Hulk, in the sense that he was.
I thought the idealized self.
Okay, so you see your idealized self, because you are often pretty fucking pissed off at like the entire world. I mean, every day you wake up and you see how people take their lives for granted, and
yes.
You hear all these people complain about how hard their lives are, and it's like, bitch, fuck you. You can walk a mile in my shit. You know what I mean?
You can get up from your own bed.
Yeah, right.
I can't.
You already won.
I have to call.
You have no right to be depressed about anything. And that's usually what happens when I call you up and, shit's going to hell for me. That's usually how you put it into perspective for me. You're like, Honor, you're not crippled. And then I laugh to myself and I'm like, that's right, I'm not crippled.
I'm not you. Yeah.
Well, and for anybody who's listening who is crippled, I obviously mean that in jest.
Absolutely.
And we have our sense of humor.
We have
with
our
each other.
jokes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that our jokes and me making fun of you, I think that's like what I mean. And don't get me wrong, you make fun of me too, like just as bad as I do you. But like that's what kind of
I have to.
Yeah.
We have to balance it out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think that's the important thing about society, though, is we need to laugh again. We've been crying.
We've been crying too much. We're a bunch of bitches now, dude.
Yes.
We need to like go out there and fucking start eating more energy bars and fucking doing some curls. Maybe do a little cocaine and then
conquer the world.
Yes, kick China in the dick.
What was it that?
And then ass rape every single person in Russia.
Scarface.
Yeah, Scarface, dude.
The world is yours.
Yeah, that's right. You don't invade my country. I invade your country.
Yeah. But let's even simplify that. Let's conquer each day.
Oh, let's conquer each. Well, dude, you got it on a Mr. Rogers level now.
Growing up, I loved Mr. Rogers.
Hey, man, he did some pretty fucking cool shit throughout his career. Actually, I don't know if you've seen that video of him online where he went and talked to.
No,
I think it was like he gave some address to like either the Senate or Congress in like the late '60s to like keep his program on the air.
Oh, I bet.
And he got like funding and everything. And here's the thing: see, a lot of people look at me as like a salesman, but it's not about selling. It's about showing
reminding the world.
Reminding others around you that you really care about what you're doing, and that inspires people, I think, more than anything. And that was the case with Mr. Rogers too, because that's what he did. I mean, he just very simply and very passionately explained and very
eloquently.
Very eloquently, but not. He didn't offend anybody with his explanation. I feel like today what we're doing is we're always jabbing at the other side.
Lowest common denominator.
Yeah, we're always looking at the other person who doesn't see our view as they're the fucking idiots.
We have to conquer them.
Yeah,
there's something to be conquered.
Yeah, there's something to be conquered. We have to beat these people, and that's the thing. That's why you got to have iron skin, because you can't force another person to think your way, but you can respect a person. And if you respect a person naturally, you will, over time, or maybe quicker than it will for others, earn their respect. Like I was in the post office.
Well, we've lost that language.
I don't think we've lost that language. We just lost patience. We lost patience because we're so in the moment, and we're swept up in all the things that we're dealing with. Like I was in the post office yesterday, and I was in line for like a half hour, and the lady was working really slow. And, you know, she wasn't the brightest, you know, person out there, but, you know, when she was helping me out, I was just nice to her. I didn't you know, I didn't show any sense that I was frustrated, even though deep down I was like, can you hurry the fuck up? I want to get the hell out of here. I had to go meet my kid at the bus stop, and, you know, like I was running late, all kinds of shit. But I basically I knew that if I got on her bad side, not only would it take longer, but nothing would get resolved. That's how she would mess up.
It would overcomplicate.
Yeah.
It would just...
So I just cooperated with her because she's the one who's helping me. I mean, I could ask for a manager, but, you know, especially when you're in the post office nowadays, you know, that's not an organization that's about customer service. And some people think that they should be customer service oriented because that's how every other business is run out there. But the U.S. Post Office, I do not believe it is a business. It is a service that you pay for. They are providing a service that, you know, which I guess, you know...
United States Postal Service.
Well, yes, the word service is in there, but I guess my point is you can argue that a business, all businesses offer a service. But
sure.
I think
it's redundant is kind of what you're saying.
It's a government-operated service, and I don't think we need to get into it. I think everybody knows what it's like to get into a post office. But treating other people with kindness, you know, that's...
You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think if more people had that philosophy, you know, we would probably learn to listen to each other and respect each other more. I think right now...
But that's why I say we lost it.
Yeah, we did. Because right now we're so swept up in the idea of we need to be right. Like, if you're a Republican, you know, you're racist. You're a piece of shit. And if you're a Democrat... Well, then you're a super liberal. You know, you just want to hug trees. You know, you like all you care about is giving everybody rights. You get offended by every little thing. You know, and look, you know, I think both sides have their arguments, and I think that both sides mean well for, you know, themselves. I'm not going to say that I'm for any of like the racist people out there, but I think there's racist people on both sides. I mean, we've seen that happen before, and there's fucked up shit going on both sides. If you look at what's going on right now in politics, I mean,
deeper veins,
yeah, like
in the mines.
Al Franken, and then you have Roy Moore, and you know you have both sides. I mean,
well, what about the people who aren't spoken of?
Well, yeah, of course, they're, you know,
you don't hear their stories.
Yeah, of course.
So let's just chalk everything up to people being people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're all fucked up in our own ways.
Yeah, for sure.
We all have our skeletons or demons in the closet or wherever else, under the bed. I think as a public figure, especially in politics, when those demons get pulled up.
Well, but everybody's got that. You know what I mean? Theirs are just like more fucked up than say ours are. You know what I mean? Because like, you know, like I wouldn't.
Well, I mean, look at how many teachers get busted for having relations with their own students.
It happened in the school that I grew up, or in the school that I went to.
And this is whether it's public or in the private schools. They all share a common denominator.
And you know the thing is like teachers, they don't get fired really easily. Like it's not easy to like, because until you have hard evidence, I mean it's all speculation. You know, like at least that's how it was. Because when I went to high school, there was a teacher, I never had him, who was sexually molesting other boys, and it took the school like a couple years to fire him, and there was a lot of uproar in the community because it's like, why would the school keep him for so long when so many students have complained? And it's not always so simple for them. And I'm not saying it's an excuse. It's just
It's not.
It's just how things are. I mean,
Because that's what happens with systems.
yeah.
And to bring this back around.
Yeah, because we should wrap this up.
Yeah, to bring this all around, we all have to remember at the end of the day, every institution shares a common denominator, which is a person or people are in it. We are flawed creatures. Wherever humans are going to be, there is going to be an issue. It's going to be something we don't like. Because, I heard this not too long ago, which is that we will always have a problem so long as there is a reflection in a mirror or a shadow to be seen. Because we will always have an issue with what we see. Even if the thing we're looking at is a reflection of the last person on earth, which is us. Because a mirror will not always show you in your best light. A shadow will not show you specific details. We will get hung up on these issues, and we will never move forward because we will always be unhappy if we just stick with seeing the absolute worst.
Yeah, and it's like, it's what you've been kind of talking me out of doing over the last month. Because, I mean, usually, once convention season is over, things quiet down a lot, sales kind of start to, level out. And, this is sort of like my time to kind of recuperate and get ready for, the next year of conventions and to prepare for stuff and to focus on other business-related matters. But, for some reason or another, I have those problems that you talk about where I just wake up and, I realize I'm not doing enough, or I'm not, maybe I'm not heading in that right direction. And what you told me was, focus on the things that, celebrate the things that I've accomplished and, allow myself to see more positivity as I'm looking at myself in that mirror. And I think that's really the one. I think that's where it all starts.
Yeah.
And when you can make a difference for someone in any capacity, let's say, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing.
Just a word.
Yeah, let's just say you're working at McDonald's, all right? Maybe not the most glorified job in the world, but let's say the money that you get from working at McDonald's helps put food on your family's table and a roof over your head. I mean, I don't think that one job alone does it, but I mean, there are so many people who work multiple jobs. Like I was just at the doctor's office a couple of weeks ago, and one of the technicians, he works for minimum wage and is a fireman outside of working as a technician, and his desire is to eventually become a doctor. But it's like even he has to work multiple jobs. And I don't think that there's any. I think every job, everything that we're doing, as long as we're bettering ourselves each day, is something to be positive about, And that's why I wanted you to come on and talk with me today, and I really appreciate you doing so.
Well, I appreciate doing this.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have you back on here at some point so we can talk about some other stuff now that people have kind of gotten a chance to know you a little bit. And you're also writing as well, like your own book.
I write, and right now, just so that they know, I'm getting over an illness. So if they hear coughs and stuff like that, it's because you
haven't really coughed,
I mean, I've let it out. It's noticeable, but I was in the hospital for a week.
Yeah, that's right. Last week you were in the hospital.
And it was a brutal one.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually genuinely afraid for you, but you made it out. And,
I made it out.
And that's why I felt it was necessary to come in and talk with you today. So, I mean, thank you again.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, man.
We'll do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.